So in this section, we are going to cover 9.2, use square roots to solve quadratic equations. So we are going to use the skill that we learned last time, simplifying square roots, and that's going to help us solve quadratic equations. Remember that we've seen quadratic equations, anything that has an x squared in Algebra 1 will be a quadratic equation. Your essential question, so be sure to write down your title, your essential question, how do you solve quadratic equations using square roots? And you can either print the cutout from Google Classroom or just go and then paste it. Or just go and paste it and then write example number 1. And once you're ready, we can start. Remember, you can pause it and we can continue on. So pause it if you need to. Solving quadratic equations using square roots. Earlier in this chapter, you studied properties of square roots, which was last section. Now you will use square roots to solve quadratic equations of the following form. So one of the things that you have to be careful is the only ones that we can solve for square roots are in this form. We have ax squared plus c. Actually, we're going to see some other ones that are a little more challenging on example number 3. The first thing that you should do is to be able to isolate the x squared on one side of the equations, so you can have x squared equals a number. And then we're going to take the square root on each side. So once I have x squared equals to d, so let's write down on the right hand side. Once you end up with x squared equals a number, then in order to be able to get rid of the square, I'm going to do the inverse operation, which will be the square root. Therefore, the square root and the square are inverses of each other. They're the opposite operation, so they cancel each other out. So therefore, x equals the square root of d. Now, one of the things that you have to remember is that every time you take the square root on both sides, you end up with two solutions, plus or minus. And some of you guys might be asking, why? The main reason that you have to do a plus or minus is if you have a number, let's say it's 9. What are the possible values for x? So many of you guys will say 3, which is correct. So x can be 3, because if you substitute, you end up with x squared equal to 9 equals 9. And I'm going to plug in a 3. Is that a true statement? Yes, because that gives you 9 equals to 9. So therefore, x equal to 3 is correct. But also, x can be negative 3. Because whenever you square the number, you have a negative 3 inside. Negative 3 times negative 3 gives you 9 equals 9. And that gives you true as well. So that's why we have a positive and a negative. And therefore, we must have a plus or a minus. Now, one of the key things that you have to remember is that whenever d is greater than 0, that means that you're going to end up with two solutions. So if you have a square root, if the value of d is positive, then you're going to end up with plus or minus. If the value of d is 0, then your answer will be 0. And if your value of d is negative, remember, we cannot take the square root of a negative number, so therefore it has no real solutions. And notice that we haven't talked about whether we have how many real solutions we have, and we're going to do that in this chapter. The difference between no real solutions and a solution. But you guys will cover that more in Algebra 2. So let's go through example number 1. Go ahead and copy it down. And then we'll continue to example number 2 in a bit. Go and pause it. Excellent. So in this case, for example, number 1, I want to be able to leave the x squared by itself. So our purpose is to be able to leave the x squared by itself. So what should be my first step? Correct. My first step should be draw the line. So what will be my second step? Correct. You can add 5 on both sides, or we can just move the 5 to the right. We can say positive 5. Therefore, that gives me 3x squared equals 60. Now we can divide by 3. Divide by 3. So x squared equals 20. The 3 cancels. And now I need to be able to leave the x by itself. Now that I have the x squared by itself, I'm going to do the opposite operation, or the inverse, which is I'm going to take the square root on both sides. The square root and the square cancel, so therefore I have x equals. Now, square root of 20. We can simplify square root of 20 just like we did last time. And you have an option. Do you guys want to do the factor tree, or you want to use a perfect square? Now remember, if you use a perfect square, it makes it a little easier, but you have to know your perfect squares. 1 times 1 is 1, so 1 is a perfect square. 2 times 2 is 4, so 4 is a perfect square. 3 times 3 is 9, is a perfect square. 4 times 4 is 16, is a perfect square. 5 times 5, 25. Next one will be 36, and so on. So which perfect square divides 20? And remember, you have to place your perfect square first. So this will be square root of 4, correct? So it'll be the square root of 4, and I'm going to place it in red. So my perfect square, I'm going to place it in red. Square root of 4 times square root of 5. And we know that the square root of 4 is 2, and the 5 stays inside the square root. And let's not forget your plus or minus. So therefore, you're going to end up with 2 answers. One of them will be x equals 2 square root of 5. And the other one will be x equals negative 2 square root of 5. One positive and one negative. Now remember that if you want to do this is a little more challenging, you can always do your factor tree. So it'll be 4 times 5, 2 times 2. I'm going to circle my prime numbers. I'm going to place them inside in order. And we have my twins will go out. And that's what I get. Because 2 times 2 is 4, so square root of 4 times 5. And that gives you the answer. So either way will work. But most of you guys will prefer it this way. But you have to make sure that your perfect square gets written down first. And you can only use those numbers, which are the perfect squares. Let's draw the next one. So let's go and draw the line. I need to be able to leave the x squared by itself. I need to isolate the x squared. So what should be my next step? Correct. You can minus 1 on both sides, so you can move the 1 to the right. We can say negative 1. So therefore, we have 5x squared equals negative 100. Next, I need to be able to leave the x squared by itself, so I can divide by 5. My 5's cancel, so therefore I have x squared, which is what I wanted, equals negative 20. I still need to leave the x by itself, so therefore I'm going to take the square root on both sides. My square root and my square cancels, so therefore x equals. What is the square root of negative number? Not possible. So it has no solutions. It has no real solutions. And this is very important because it does have solutions that you guys will discover in Algebra 2, but we don't tackle the imaginary solutions yet in Algebra 1. So for now, we say we have no real solutions, because the solution that it has will be imaginary, and that will be in Algebra 2. Example number 2 will be exactly the same process. So see if you can work on example number 2a by yourself, and then we'll work on 2b. Go ahead and pause it. Excellent. So example 2b. So I need to be able to leave the x by itself. I need to leave the x squared by itself first. I'm going to go and draw the line. I need to subtract 5 on both sides or move my 5 to the right because it's negative 5. Remember that you want to use a red pen to annotate your notes. So in this case, I have 2x squared equals 36. I still need to leave that x squared by itself. So therefore, I need to get rid of the 2. It's multiplying. I'm going to divide. The 2's cancel, so therefore I have x squared equals 36 divided by 2 will be 18. I want to get rid of the square, so therefore I'm going to take the square root on both sides. The square root and the square cancel, so therefore x equals the square of 18. We can do the factor tree or the perfect square. In this case, let's do the factor tree, and then we'll do it this easier way. So therefore the square of 18 will be 9 or 6 times 3. 6 will be 3 times 2. And I'll circle all my prime numbers. Inside will be a 2, 3, and a 3. I'm going to circle my twins. They come out because 3 times 3 is square of 9, and the square of 9 is 3. So therefore this will be 3 square root of 2. And let's not forget the plus or minus. So every time we take the square root, it will be a positive and a negative answer. So sometimes you guys will see it listed as this. Sometimes you guys will see it separated, which is, I prefer it that way, so that way you guys remember that there are two answers, one with a positive 3 square root of 2, the other one with a negative 3 square root of 2. Now remember that the square of 18 can have been simplified. If you can think of a perfect square that divides 18, will be square root of 9 times square root of 2. Remember that you must write down your perfect square first because that will give you 3 and square root of 2. So whether you want to do it this way with the factor tree or you want to do it with the perfect square, it'll give you exactly the same answer. Letter B. I need to be able to leave the x squared by itself, but in this case there's a negative 3 in there. So I want to be able to leave this section by itself. I'll go and draw the line. So therefore, what should I do? I need to get rid of the 2. Correct. So I should divide by 2 on both sides. My 2's cancel, so therefore I have x minus 3 squared equals 4. Now I need to get rid of the square, so therefore I'm going to take the square root on both sides. My square root and my square cancel, so therefore I have x minus 3 equals the square of 4. Square of 4 is a perfect square, so that is only 2. And let me not forget my plus or minus. Remember that whenever this is a perfect square, you don't need to do the factor tree. We already know that the square root of 4 is 2. And now we have one more step. I need to be able to leave the x by itself. So therefore, I'm going to move my 3 to the right, and I'm going to place it right after the equal sign. It becomes a positive. So therefore, x equals positive 3, and then we still have my plus or minus 2. Notice that plus or minus 2 belongs to the plus and minus belongs to the 2. And now we're going to have two answers. One positive and 1 negative. So therefore, x equals 3 plus 2, 1 with a positive 2, which gives you 5, and 1 with a negative 2, which gives you 1. So in this case, your answer will be 5 and 1. Remember that every time you take the square root, you end up with plus or minus, which is going to give you two answers. In this case, we have two real answers. We have two rational answers, where in this case, we have two irrational numbers. Let's go to example number 3. On example number 3, you should be able to do letter A by yourself. So try letter A, and then we'll continue. We'll do letter B. It's slightly different, a little more challenging. Or see if you can do letter B as well. Go ahead and pause it, and then we'll go through the solutions. Excellent. So therefore, I'm going to draw the line. I need to leave the x squared by itself, so I need to isolate the x squared. So therefore, I need to get rid of the 4 and the negative 3. So I'm going to get rid of the negative 3, add 3 on both sides, or just move it to the right. We can say positive 3. So now we have 4x squared equals 100. I need to leave the x squared by itself still, so therefore I need to divide by 4 on both sides. My 4's cancels. I have x squared equals 25. And now I need to get rid of the square, so now I can take the square root on both sides. My square root and my square cancels, so therefore I have x equals. The square of 25 is 5. Remember, you don't need to do the factor trick because this is a perfect square. So you will just end up with plus or minus. And don't forget your plus or minus. Sometimes you guys will see the answer listed as this. Sometimes you guys will see a separate, one with a positive 5 and one with a negative 5. Letter B. Let me see if I can fix my, I know it's kind of flashing. So let's go through letter B. I'm going to draw the line. And I want to be able to leave whatever is being squared by itself. So I want to be able to leave this by itself. I need to get rid of the negative 2 and the negative 1. What should I do first? Correct. I should do the, get rid of the negative 1. I'm going to add 1 on both sides, or I can just move the 1 to the right because it's a positive 1. So therefore I have negative 2. My x plus 1 squared is still there, equals different signs, subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. And now I need to be able to get rid of the negative 2. I'm going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. My negatives 2 cancels, so therefore I have x plus 1 squared equals. Negative divided by negative is going to be positive. 36 divided by 2 will be 18. Now I can get rid of the square. I cannot take out the 1 because the 1 is being held back by the square. So therefore, you need to take the square root on both sides first. And that will give me x plus 1 equals. Now the square of 18. The square of 18, I can simplify, and I'm going to use the perfect square. Which perfect square divides 18? Correct. Square of 9 times the square of 2. And I know that the square of 9 is 3. Remember, you have to write down your perfect square first. So it'll be 3 is the square of 9, and the square of 2 is still there. And let me not forget my plus or minus. And there's one last step. I'm going to move my 1 to the right because it's a negative 1. And we're going to place it before the plus or minus, right after the equal sign. X equals. That's a positive. It's going to become a negative 1 plus or minus 3 square root of 2. Now, this is a irrational number, so I cannot add it to a rational number. Those two cannot be added, so it stays as this. And many times you guys will see it rewritten in two different, one with a positive and one with a negative. So therefore, x equals negative 1, one with a positive, 3 square root of 2, x equals negative 1, one with a negative, 3 square root of 2. So sometimes they'll place it together, sometimes they're going to separate. Now let's go to example number 4, the last example. See if you can do it yourself. Those are easy problems. Go and pause it. So I'm going to draw the line. I need to be able to leave whatever is being squared by itself. So therefore I need to get rid of the negative 3. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. My negative 3's are going to cancel. So therefore I have x minus 4 squared. Negative divided by negative is going to be positive. 24 divided by 3 will be 8. And now I need to get rid of the square. Remember, you cannot get rid of your negative 4 yet because that's been held back by the square. So I need to get rid of the square on both by taking the square root on both sides. The square root and the square cancel, so therefore I have x minus 4 equals the square of 8. Which perfect square divides 8? Correct. Square of 4. And remember, you have to place your square root first times the square of 2. The square of 4 is 2. And my square of 2 is still there. So this is here, the square of 2 is here. And let me not forget my plus or minus. Or if you prefer, you can do your factor tree, which is 4 times 2. 2 is a prime number. 2 and 2, they're both prime numbers. So therefore I have 1, 2, 3, 3 2's. My 2's come out, and there's a lonely 2 inside. And I have one last step. Move my 4 to the right, we can say positive 4. Let me not forget my plus or minus. You have 2 square root of 2. Sometimes you guys will see it. Remember, you cannot add a rational number and an irrational number. So therefore, you can leave it as that, or we can separate. X equals 4, 1 with a positive, 2 square root of 2. And if we need an actual answer, we can actually type into the calculator. And if you have just a regular calculator will do as well. So sometimes you guys will see it. I can just type in 4 plus 2, the square root of 2. If I need a decimal, I can change it to a decimal. And then I can type in the second one. And I'll write it down in a second. 4 minus 2 square root of 2. And that will give me a decimal as well. So therefore my other answers can be 6.8 and the second will be 1.1. Sorry for the flash, I'm not sure what's going on. So let me write down for now x equals 4 minus 2 square root. But most of the time they want an exact answer rather than an approximation. And the last example for today. Draw the line, move my 10 to the right, it's a negative 10. So therefore we have 2x squared equals negative 8. I need to leave the x squared by itself, so I'm going to divide by 2. I have x squared equals negative 4. And I'm going to take the square root on both sides. But remember that we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So therefore, there are no real solutions. So this is 9.2. Email me if you have any questions, and have a great day.